Some people have called the Xbox Elite Series 2 one of the best controllers of all time, but is it really that great? What's happening, guys? Welcome back to another video, and in July I finally pulled the trigger on something that I've kind of had hanging in the back of my mind for a while, an Xbox Elite Series 2 Core. Why, you might ask? Because they were throwing in a Deadpool and Wolverine controller holder. And no, I'm not kidding, I'm a sucker for a freebie. But after 3 months, is this controller worth it? Let's talk about it. Let's start off with a quick overview of what these things can actually do. There are two different Elite Series 2 kits you can buy. The standard kit that includes the controller, back paddles, swappable thumbsticks, a different D-pad design, USB-C cable, and a carrying case. Those extra accessories come at an extra cost because it runs you $180, but if you're wanting to shave a little bit off the top of that final price, that's where the Elite Series 2 Core comes in, which is the one that I went with here. The Core model ditches all of the extra accessories, the thumbsticks, the D-pad, the back paddles, and the carrying case, and just brings things back to the basics with a controller and a charging cable for $130. That's a $50 difference compared to the standard controller bundle. Obviously, prices vary depending on sales or your retailer that you're going through, but I've seen the Elite Series 2 Core drop to $100 or lower during sales, and the standard kit can see some pretty steep dips too. But did those come with a Deadpool controller holder? I don't think so. But the functionality of the Elite goes way beyond hot swappable components. You've got trigger stops on the back with 3 different settings for how far you want to pull the trigger before it activates. If you've never used something like this, it can basically turn your trigger into a button if you're into that kind of thing. And then there are the back paddles. The Elite Series 2 has 4 back paddle slots that are completely customizable to whatever you want them to be in the Xbox Accessories app. But if you get the Core controller, keep in mind that it doesn't come with the back paddles. Thankfully, you can either buy the official component pack to grab everything that you might have missed if you're having some buyer's remorse and wish you'd gone for the more expensive version, but that's going to cost you $60. Or you can do what I did and get scuff back paddles for $20, which is a smaller number. So that's what I went with. But I want to hold off on talking about those right now because I want to focus on the Core experience. Is the Xbox Elite Series 2 Core on its own better than a standard Xbox controller? Absolutely, without a doubt. It's hard to describe unless you pick one up and hold it in your hands, but this controller just feels premium compared to the standard Xbox controller. It's got a little bit of extra weight to it, which I'm sure has to do with the rechargeable battery being built in, and we'll get to that more in a second, but this controller just feels really great in the hand thanks to higher quality components and a different design for the grips. Standard Xbox controllers have different grip designs. On the base models, the grips have plastic on the front and the back, but if you splash the cash on a different design, like the Lunar Shift, the back of that grip has rubber to help you hold on to it a little bit easier. The Elite Series 2 takes that to the next level and wraps the entirety of both grips in that rubber, so you've got a firm grip on this thing when you get the palm sweats playing Stakeout 24/7. Beyond that, the thumbsticks feel a little bit different since they are swappable, but they've got this kind of metallic coating around the base that makes them glide along the controller faceplate a little bit easier when you're in game. But they've also got an extra trick. The thumbsticks are adjustable, meaning you can increase or lower the tension to your liking. If you're a competitive player that's really spending time to dial in on the right settings, that could be a big win compared to a standard controller. And speaking of tuning, the Xbox Accessories app has basically everything you could ever want. You can adjust the sensitivity of the triggers, dead zones on the thumbsticks, assign buttons to the back paddles if you get those, and even change the color of the Xbox button. Now, I'm not someone who really got in here to dig into the settings and spent time to fine-tune things to my liking because honestly, it's fine out of the box, and I would say that 90% of people that buy this controller probably aren't going to be doing that either. But it's important to call out because if you are one of those people that likes fiddling with their thumbsticks and changing the activation levels of hair triggers, then they've got you covered on that one. Speaking of the customization, you're probably not going to want to use your Call of Duty settings to play Forza or your Forza settings to play Skyrim for the 17th time, and Xbox has you covered there, but it comes at a cost. On the Elite Series 2, the share button is replaced by the profile button that lets you swap between 3 different profiles that are stored on the controller, and this is great for someone that's really getting into those custom settings on the Elite Series 2. But if you're someone like me, who is constantly taking screenshots and saving gameplay to share on socials or edit into videos, it's a bit of a bummer. Now, it's not that bad. Taking screenshots or recording gameplay isn't that much more difficult. You just push the home button and then push Y for a screenshot or X to record what happened. But the share button is just so convenient. It's one of my favorite new features from this generation. So in future iterations of the Elite controller, I'd love to see just another button added to the top for profile swapping so the share button can stay front and center. But maybe that's just me. So the most important question, how does this thing play? And being honest, when I first started using this controller, Wasn't really a fan. It felt strange compared to the standard Xbox controllers that I'd gotten used to since the Xbox One came out, and I was shelving it more often than I was picking up and playing with it as my go-to. But the more that I used it, the more that it grew on me, and a lot of why I love this controller is the premium feel. The grip is great, the weight is good, the grips are awesome. It's just a solid piece of tech, both, metaphorically and literally. But beyond that, I do think there's a bit of an advantage here with those hair triggers. I've been playing a ton of Black Ops 6 and keep those hair triggers set to the second setting right in the middle. This gives some of that satisfaction with the sense of pulling a trigger to fire, but it also gives me an edge on the standard players that are using regular controllers that have to fully pull in and activate that trigger. It's a millisecond of time saved, but that could be the difference between me being the first one to get a shot off and a .2 KD on Nuketown. Between the premium feel and the hair triggers, the Elite Series 2 has become my go-to controller, but what about those back paddles? A few days after this controller arrived, I got these third-party back paddles from Scuf to take my Elite gaming to the next Elite level and really experience the ascension to the ultimate controller life. And they're okay. For someone that's been playing games for over 20 years, these are weird. I'm so accustomed to focusing on face buttons or triggers that it's almost impossible to remember to use back paddles when I'm in the middle of a match. There's this natural reflex that you've got to overcome to really bake these into your gameplay style. But when you do, they could be great. I tapped David Berdette at Gaming Trend to get his thoughts on the Elite Series 2 and back paddles specifically because he's a big back paddle fan, albeit right now on the Victrix Pro BFG wireless controller, but I wanted to hear from somebody who's ride or die with this kind of tech, so take a listen. So I got David Berdette with me here today. David, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into the discussion around the Elite Series 2 a little bit.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm David Berdette. I'm the lead editor with GamingTrend.com. I've been doing that for about 4 years. Been in the gaming space for much, much longer. Worked at GameStop for like 13 years. Then decided, you know what, I want to stick around it after I left and started writing. So ended up where I am now. We went to Call of Duty next this year. Lots of fun stuff.
Yeah, very cool. It's an exciting weekend. We've got Call of Duty. The launch is going on as we record this. We're on the Saturday after launch day for Black Ops 6. So this is whenever I still feel good at the game. And part of the thing that I got sent was the Elite Series 2. And then I had the Elite Series 2 from a couple of months ago. And so I know you and I are both in the XEP Discord, the Xbox Expansion Pass. And we were talking back and forth about the Elite controllers and the back paddles specifically. And I said that I can't grapple with using these. Like my brain just doesn't function with these. And you said that you had them, and you said that you had requested to specifically use them during the Call of Duty Next event. So talk to me about that. How did you integrate back paddles into the way you play?
Okay, so I obviously started like everybody else does without them because it wasn't a thing years upon years ago. When the Elite Series came out, I thought that was a neat idea, but I was like, I was the same way. And how in the world does this help? Like, because it's that same idea of just using stuff. So I ended up actually the first controller I started using that had the paddles specifically that I used. Astro came out with the C40 controller a long time ago, and that had two back buttons. It was for PlayStation 5, and I played on PlayStation 4, and I played on the PlayStation 4 at that point on Modern Warfare 2019, and used it a little bit. I actually used them a little more with Overwatch at that point as extra buttons to just hit and use, and they were neat. But then it was like I started playing on PC back in Cold War, and I tried to use that controller, but I was already having issues with it from just the extended use that I'd had with it. And I pulled out my Elite controller and was like, okay, I've got to make myself learn how to use this. And at first it was I took the back paddles off, or the two of them off. So I was only using two back paddles. Well, and then really it's just been a training thing this is the Call of Duty Victrix Pro BFG. It's got 4 just integrated back buttons. This is actually more akin to like the C40 that I used back in the day, which was my favorite. But with the Elite controller, it was the thing of, I've got to make myself learn to do this because we're so used to taking your thumb off the stick, hit your face button, and doing all of those prompts. It's just a part of us. We've done it for so long. It's part of us. But it's kind of just like any sort of discipline. You just have to make yourself do it.
Yeah.
And Because I have a friend I actually gave a controller with some back sticks, and he was like, I can't learn, I can't figure. I'm like, you just have to literally, it comes down to you have to make yourself do it. It has to become a thing of you're retraining muscle memory, full on muscle memory on how you're playing something. And the whole reason that it's so beneficial is like in a game like Call of Duty, if you've played it as much as I have, you know that every second matters. Every little measurement can matter. Like whether that last bullet, one of you guys gets it.
Right.
And whatever advantage you can get. I mean, that's part of the reason I play on PC is because I'm getting like 240 frames out of a 4080. So I want to get every advantage. Back buttons give you an advantage in the sense that when I'm playing this, I'm not taking my thumb off my aim to go and press a button. I can instead jump as I'm aiming or slide as I'm aiming. Everybody has kind of different preferences as to what back buttons. Mine are, I use this for jumping, I use this for sprinting, this up top is my slide, and then this over here is my melee, because I don't want to click my sticks either. For me, it's anything that'll get in the way of me aiming. That's what I want to make sure is not there. And for me, reloading, can't be shooting while I'm reloading, and swapping my weapon. I'm usually not going to be aiming while I'm swapping my weapon either. And at that point, it's usually a last resort of why I'm switching out my weapon. So truly, it just became when I knew I was going to go jump around a corner, I'm intentionally using that back button. Like you're as silly as it is, you really have to get to that point of, instead of letting your muscle memory run everything when you're playing a game, you have to actually, and the word physically doesn't really work here, but you have to physically think about, okay, I'm jumping around this corner with this button.
Yeah.
And honestly, just in all, I don't want to say I can't operate without them, but man, I know when they're not there, because I went to Treyarch back in June, and that's when we first got our hands on Call of Duty before beta. And you had the choice of mouse, keyboard, controller that they had available there. And they had Xbox controllers already set up for us because it was supposed to be quicker sessions at this one. And it was, I'm running around with the Xbox controller, and I could feel myself gripping at my controller, trying to press back buttons that weren't there at different moments. Like I could still kind of use my thumbstick, like clicking that and running and stuff. It didn't kill my ability to use everything, but I could tell that it's like there's things that I had built into how I played the game, with jumping around, with sliding around, that were suddenly were tougher because I didn't have that extra benefit. So I had to kind of adjust how I was playing, because I couldn't play as fast. I had to be more calculated because I didn't have that extra advantage. And then when we went to Call of Duty next, it was like, okay, one of the first questions I asked, can I bring my controller?
And so what was the answer? Yes, I assume.
Yes. They were like, look, you can't bring any other gear because other stuff is sponsored. They want to make sure stuff is like, right. But controller wise, they were like, yes, you can definitely bring your controller. So, I mean, I literally brought my Victrix. I actually brought two of them just to make, you never want to be somewhere a couple hours away from home and not have that second controller when you're supposed to be streaming something for somebody.
Yeah, definitely makes sense.
And have one go out.
I was going to say, I know that I was sent a controller for review here in a couple of weeks, and it seems like more and more of the third-party controllers are baking these in. Even like the lower-end Power A stuff tends to have some kind of at least 2 or 4 back paddles. And the way that I've been using them too, I'm definitely not on your level of a Call of Duty player by any means. Like I kind of check in and then check out at the beginning of the new launch, but I use the top 2 as my LB and RB, just like a replicant of what's on the back, and then I use melee and reload. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, and then I can throw down the field equipment a little bit faster that way. But I have started, after you had told me you kind of got to think about it, I've started trying to be more intentional about getting in there and actually using these as I'm playing. And I definitely think that there's a little bit of like an advantage to it, but not to the point that it's unfair. And that's kind of the final question I'd want to leave you with. Do you feel like this gives you an advantage in the field, or if somebody's good enough, can they, make up for what they don't have with the back paddles by just getting used to playing on a regular controller?
I mean, your capability obviously is going to carry you no matter what the situation is. Like if you're just really good at however you play the game, you're going to beat people with this. Like it truly does boil down to it's never the equipment, it's the player. If you stink at the game, back paddles aren't going to necessarily make you this god at the game. I do think I do think that they do give you an advantage, though. Like I said, the way I have it specifically set up, I'm at an advantage in the sense that my thumb is always on my aiming button. So there are specific functions of jumping, sliding, all these things that I can engage you on my terms compared to, and I don't have to lose that split second of aiming at you wherever you've gone to do that. Like the Call of Duty pros, actually, most of them run back buttons.
Yeah.
And it's just because a thing of they're already incredible at aiming. If you take out any extra outside interference, would be probably the best word for it, of that aiming, then suddenly I'm in an advantage because I'm tracking you and I'm moving around and jumping and sliding.
Yeah, that's interesting. I assumed that the pros had used it, but you never, I don't really stay tuned into what everybody's using specifically, especially I'm more of an HCS player, so I don't really look at how they're really playing the game, but I guess that does make some sense. Which
I'd say even the HCS pros use back buttons and whatnot. I use back buttons when I'm playing Halo. So
yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, I know that my fiance, whenever she picks up an Elite controller, there's an audible ooh from her because she's like, why does it have these things growing out of the back of it? The other question I did have for you that I forgot to mention, do you use the stop triggers at all? Does that change the way you play?
Yes.
Okay, so how do you set those up for Call of Duty specifically?
So what's fun with the Victrix, it actually has 5 different stops.
Ooh, cool.
So that's one of the things that's kind of neat about it. I use probably the second to highest.
Okay.
Because it stops almost too quickly for me with the highest, but the second to highest, there's enough pull that I feel comfortable. It's again not something that I think is going to elevate somebody, but we're back to that split second. If I can be aiming down my sights faster, if my gun is going off faster than you, it does give me a little bit of an advantage in that, but I have to hit my shots.
Yeah, right. That makes a lot of sense. I need to toy
doesn't
around
matter
with
if I empty half the mag and it doesn't hit you.
Yeah. I have not toyed around with the stop triggers in Call of Duty because honestly, I forgot that they were there as I got this new controller and I started playing with it. So that's my next thing I'm going to test. And I know that you're going to be testing a lot this weekend. You're doing a lot of Black Ops 6 streaming and coverage at Gaming Trend. You want to kind of talk to the people about where they can find you and all the work you're doing over there?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I actually take the day off at work. I work a regular day job and take the day off so I can play Call of Duty all weekend.
There you go.
But you'll be able to find our coverage. We are Gaming Trend videos on YouTube and then gamingtrend.com. I'm hoping by the beginning of next week, we'll start rolling out our written coverage, which will feature scores. We are on Metacritic, OpenCritic, so all of our scores will be up there as well. And then if you want to come chat Call of Duty with me, you can find me at @SplitEnd89 on Twitter. That's where I do most of my gaming talk.
There you go. Yeah, you're always a great person to connect with. I love talking to you in the Discords and stuff. But thank you for taking a couple of minutes out of your day to talk to me about your experience with the back buttons and back paddles and the Elite side of the controller side. But enjoy Black Ops 6, and I can't wait to see the coverage.
You as well. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no worries. And finally, we come to the battery life. It is incredibly impressive. The only other device that's impressed me on this level when it comes to battery life is a pair of 2nd-gen AirPods, and I swear I charge these things like once every 6 months. Xbox says the Elite Series 2 is packing 40 hours of game time in its rechargeable battery, which is a big leg up on the standard Xbox controller, which has 0 hours of battery life with its rechargeable battery, because it doesn't have one. Now, this can become a big console war point depending on who you're talking to, but I've never really minded the lack of a rechargeable battery in Xbox controllers. I bought a set of rechargeable AA battery packs that I've been using since the Xbox One generation, and they work great. Pop them in, play for a couple of days, and then swap them out to let the other one charge while you keep on playing. No cables required, and it's never really an issue. But the Elite Series 2 battery life is truly great, and not to compare apples to oranges, but compared to the DualSense Edge on the PlayStation side, that tops out at 5 to 7 hours of game time. So, is the Elite Series 2 core worth it? And for me, I think so, but there are some trade-offs that might make it a harder sell depending on who you're talking to. Make no mistake, this is a premium controller, and it really is elite compared to the standard Xbox controller. It feels great, looks great, and has a ton of functionality packed in that goes above and beyond what the standard Xbox controller delivers. The hair triggers have absolutely made an impact on how I play games. The adjustable thumbsticks are a nice option to bake in for people that really want to dial in on the right settings for them, and combine that with the premium look and feel and the extra option to go all in on controller components if you really find yourself loving this experience, then it's a solid controller option for the more hardcore Xbox or PC players out there. But it is expensive at $130 compared to a standard Xbox controller you can generally find on sale for about $40, and if you're somebody that just wants a basic controller that gets you from point A to point B and lets you play your games, then the standard Xbox controller is more than enough to get the job done. But if you're this far into an Elite Series 2 controller video, you're probably not that person. And I'd also say if you're someone that spends a lot of time playing RPGs or games with big open worlds where you're snapping screenshots and using photo mode on a regular basis, and I'm talking a power user for photo mode, the lack of a dedicated share button might be something that's worth considering. I mean, I can't imagine that being a make or break for many people, but it's something that I missed, and I did want to throw that in here. So there they are, my thoughts on the Elite Series 2 after using it as my main controller for 3 months. Is it pricey? Yes. Is it worth it? Yes, depending on what kind of player you are. But I would love to know your thoughts down below. What do you think about the Elite Series 2? Have you used one? What do you think about these features? And if you haven't picked one up, does it look like the kind of controller you'd want to splash the cash on? Let me know down below. And of course, if you're new here, you like what you see and what you hear, hit that subscribe button for videos like this every week and gaming news shorts throughout the week to keep you in the loop. But I'll catch you on the next one.